And we will swiftly move on to our next guest, who is Jakob Granit, who is the Director General for the Swedish Agency for Marine and Water Management, HAV in Swedish. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody. Very nice to be here. I represent the Swedish Water Agency for Marine and Water Management. We put the title here as Public Sector Enablers to Support Sustainable Growth. And the idea was to show some examples of what we actually are doing. And I think it links very well to the previous presentations on what we are doing at the regional scale with HELCOM and what we're doing to CBSs and what we are doing also through the European frameworks of cooperation. Now, who are we, this agency? Well, we are a central government agency that was established in 2011. And we sort of under the Ministry of Environment and Energy, and you heard the minister speaking earlier in the morning. Our role is to coordinate, guide, finance, and implement various programs, policies, measures to change the course, the development here in the region related to water and ocean management. We work very closely with the 5 water management agencies set out in the country in implementing the EU Water Framework Directive. We also work very closely within 3 sea basin management districts to implement the EU's Marine Strategy Framework Management Directive and also the Marine Spatial Planning Directive. So our role is actually to take these directives and implement them within the country. And we also are engaged in fisheries management, and in that case we work on the implementation of the EU's Common Fisheries Policy. Now, I also put up a slide here on the side which shows that we are actually a rather unique agency in the world that works all the way from the source on the land, all the way to the coastal zone and into the ocean zone. So what we are trying to do here is try to see how we can coordinate different sectorial-based management approaches. Not to interlink everything into one management system, but see how we can smartly connect the dots between, for example, flows such as water resources, sediments, pollution, the marine debris problem, biota and materials, that is changing the landscape. And then try to enhance the different ecosystem services that we need to see as a return flow. That could be food, clean water, jobs, tourism opportunities, and so forth. We are also responsible for looking into the Swedish environmental quality objectives. And now we have seen a lot of objectives here, the SDG agenda with their 17 goals. We also have, at the national perspective, 17 environmental quality objectives. And our agency is responsible for 3 of them to monitor progress. Zero eutrophication, flourishing lakes and streams, and also a balanced marine environment and flourishing coastal areas and archipelagos. And in that context, we just did the review for this year's overview of what the status is. And we can see, unfortunately, that we will not achieve these objectives set by 2020. And unfortunately, there's really no clear trend in the changing in the state of the environment either. But I think what we have to recognize here is this very long time lag that we talked about earlier today. And that the good measures that we have seen, the reduction in nutrients, for example, is having an impact, and it will take some time before we really see the progress. Now, we are then working very constructively through a number of sectors as agencies. I will give some example. In the freshwater arena, we work on developing water management programs or measures together with the water management agencies. And this is an example in which, in this country, for example, we have over 13,000 dams and reservoirs that we need to deal with and work with to see how we can change the way they're operating. We have over 2,300 hydropower dams as well that we're also working on. So these are some examples that we try to work throughout the country with EU funding, with a number of stakeholders, looking into examples. Can we remove dams? Is that an alternative? How can we restore spawning grounds? How can we use fish count to see how many fish are moving in the watersheds? And how can we deal with hydropower use in a constructive manner? So these types of measures are now being implemented throughout the country in various arenas. In the energy field, in the sector of energy, we work very closely on the hydropower and the environment arena. And as we know, many of our hydropower plants in this country have rather old agreements, and they need to be to be modernized, the legislation, so that these plants are adapted to modern standards. But at the same time, we also need to maintain the value of hydropower production and restoring the ecosystems. So this is a balance. So for the past 4 years, the agency has worked with stakeholders from public sector and private sector to find a common language in how can we restore some of our biodiversity and environmental flows and maintain the balance and regulation functions of our energy system. And just recently, we are seeing now very strong progress in setting up a private sector trust fund to take care of a lot of these funding needs that are needed to establish these mitigation measures. In the marine management field, we are responsible for marine spatial planning to promote sustainable development. And this is really an important process. And just imagine that we haven't had any marine spatial planning framework until now. We're beginning to work on that together with our EU partners along the Baltic states. And in this context here, we have 3 marine spatial planning areas in the Gulf of Bothnia, in the Baltic Sea, and in the Skagerrak, Kattegat, western part of the country. And the idea here is to look at balancing interests. These are hard security interests, it's transport and navigation, it is marine protected areas, it is energy utilization, and it's seabed mining, for example. So these areas now need to come together. And by 2020, we hope that we will have marine spatial planning plans ready for the government to approve. And this work has to be done with stakeholder involvement, otherwise it wouldn't work. So it's very strong work with the municipalities, county boards, and the private sector, and the different NGOs that are interested in these areas. A particular area in this space, which is one which deserves some extra attention, is when the land-based resources meets the coastal zone and into the ocean. Here you have overlapping management directives that needs to come together. And this is a very special zone in which there are a lot of opportunities, not in the least, to explore more marine technology, the opportunities, tourism and leisure. So we need to get the coastal zone right. And on the right here you can see a map showing how these different plans are being developed. Blue growth, of course. The agency has a major role to work with the Ministry of Enterprise to develop this plan, the strategy for development of maritime industries. And this is an area which we also need to infuse and get involved into the marine spatial planning arena. So how can we develop different industries and technologies to sustain and build growth? And final example here is in the fisheries arena. There are major reforms going on in the fisheries field. Some example is that we are introducing now rights-based, it should be rights, not right-based management of fishing opportunities in Sweden, which essentially means that we are transferring the annual quota to the fisherman himself, who then monitors during the year. And the idea here is to make sure that the landing obligation, that is that all fish should be landed, is actually being completed, and that the fisherman also responds by being more selective over the year. So this is a major innovation happening right now in this field. And we are also, together with the industry, introducing now a traceability system in which we can follow the fish from the catch on the boat all the way through to the market, to the consumer, so that we can see where the fish has been fished, what sort of type it is, species it is, and how that has been done in a correct manner. And this is now being done throughout the EU. So all EU, still 27 countries are implementing, 28 are implementing this type of traceability systems. And there are some good examples. Things are actually changing. The long-term focus on fisheries management is changing the way of the Baltic salmon. We are now seeing there was a very, very long downward trend, which is now changing, and we can see a major increase in salmon in our river systems, which is contributing to fisheries, to tourism, and also for general aesthetic values and the ecosystem as such. So major progress. And then the final slide, looking at we have talked a lot about the upcoming ocean conference in June. And this, I think, is a fantastic example in which Sweden takes the lead to look at how can we not only look at the Baltic, but also look at the global ocean situation and interlink issues from source to sea by working upstream. So we know we have to deal with goal 14, which is the state of the oceans, but we also know that we have to work upstream with land use change, with clean water and sanitation, with the climate problem, and not to say the least, with the food situation. So we are working with our government agencies and other colleagues to support the process of the Ocean Conference in June, which I hope many of you will attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Jakob. Just very quickly, you've been working on this source to sea concept now as the Director General of HAV, but you've been working on it for a long time also with GEF, Global Environment Facility, in the UN system. What is the main barrier? What is it that is difficult to overcome in order to really get that systematic approach to land, water, coastal zone, marine management? What would you say is the trick? Is it political? Is it knowledge? What would you say?
Yeah, I think I would separate into two big issues. One is awareness. We know that everything we do on land has an impact on the sea, but we haven't really seen how these dots are connected. So one issue is just to put that framework together and explain in a simple manner what are the linkages and how can we tackle them. How can we tackle, for example, marine debris, not by fishing it up in the oceans, but actually working upstream and finding good systems on land. And the second one, so that is on the awareness side. The second one would be, as we heard the earlier speaker say, we are still working in sectors. And that's not to say that that's bad. I think we actually need to work in sectors. But we also need to make sure that we coordinate between these sectors. So we have different management approaches on land, in our watersheds, but also along the coast and in the ocean. But we need to see how we can connect them. So that we do one operation and support blue growth strategies in the oceans. Could it be aquaculture, for example? That has an impact on the system as a whole, both downstream and upstream. So these are the two things I think we need to work more on as we progress that field.
So maybe a follow-up question on that connecting before we ask the audience for questions. You talked a lot about sort of the public procurement, the level of the officials, Sweden, so to speak. What about connecting between that and the local levels, the NGO sectors? Do you see a role for HAV there as well? Or?
Yeah, the HAV wouldn't do its job if it did not consult and work together with the various stakeholders that we do have in this country and beyond. So the one example I provided there was the dialogue on hydropower, for example. By working very strategically over a 4-year period with the NGO sector, with the private sector and public agencies, just to find a common language. What does it mean to make hydropower more environmentally friendly on the one hand, and what does it mean to maintain the balancing power of our energy system? So how can we get these two languages, these two different groups of people to speak together and understand that? So we have to do that, and I think all successful governance and later on management depend on the interaction and the participation of various stakeholders.
So let's have some interaction from the public here. Is there some questions? Yes. Do we have a microphone here, please?
So we take one question. That's what we can take.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I just keep talking.
Just speak, don't touch.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It was a very
Please
quick...
present yourself.
Sorry?
Please present yourself. Who are
Present
you?
myself.
Yes.
All right, of course I do. My name is Claes Bogart. I represent something called the Baltic Salmon Fund. And you can all guess we are trying to increase the options and the possibility of salmon, Baltic salmon, and also the reproduction. Your presentation was fantastic, but very quick, so I couldn't follow everything. There was one of the slides which mentioned private trusts. Could you please elaborate a little bit on that? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I'm sorry to rush through that, the big topic. I wanted to give examples, and that's obviously a problem. The example was a private sector trust fund, which is now being established, depending on legislation put in place for renewable hydropower, so that we can find measures to mitigate the impacts hydropower has had on our watersheds. So the trust fund, which is the indication of 12 billion Swedish kronor, which we hope we will see in place very soon, will support those mitigation measures that needs to be taken in different hydropower plants. Yes, the focus is on making hydropower sustainable. So that's the key area. But I do think we also need to move beyond the hydropower field into those other 13,000 regulations that you have reservoirs in this country. So there's a lot of work to be done, but also a lot of good stuff is happening. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Jakob. And you're absolutely right. These are short presentations. They are teasers. Hopefully you can grab Jakob during the coffee break as well. And in the parallel sessions, we are aware of that. Very short to present something which is so big and so interesting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. We have colleagues here as well.
And a gift.
And a gift.